I'm your host, Kylee Stone. It gives me an enormous pleasure and it's a real privilege actually here today to be able to host this particular panel, something that I'm deeply passionate about. I'm here in Sydney, Australia, and it is customary here, which I'm absolutely delighted to say, that as an Aboriginal woman, often when we start an event, we do like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land. So I would like to start with acknowledging and paying my respects to the traditional owners and to any elders past and present, Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander, Indigenous peoples and First Nations, wherever you are living, working from today, acknowledge and pay my respects. I would also like to start today by acknowledging the co-founders of the Passionistas project, Amy and Nancy Harrington, for really the extraordinary work that they've done in creating this event, creating this movement, and doing what they've done to bring together such an extraordinary group of people. So I just happen to be the lucky person who gets to facilitate today. And it really, I think we have such an extraordinary lineup of guests. And while you cannot see each of them right now, I do want to give an opportunity to welcome all of you, including our guests, who are 6 extraordinary women from all over the world, each of them with decades of experience in transformation. We have Angela Philp, Shona Bernard-Chandler, Louise Sullivan, Raquel Medrano Clemente, Georgiana Covell, and JJ Ferrari. And I am going to introduce a little bit more about them as each of them come up on stage. But before we do that, I actually just want to welcome you here for being here and really thank you for joining us today as one of our guests and a participant. So I'm going to start with a couple of housekeeping items to ensure that you can get the most value out of the session. Firstly, I'll just give you an overview of how the agenda is going to look. So there will be 2 parts to the session. The first part, each woman is going to come up on stage and share a 5-minute story about their personal relationship with transformation. And before each of them come up on stage, I'll do a brief introduction about who they are and where they're from. That's going to take anywhere from between 35 to 40 minutes. Then in the second part of the evening, everyone's going to come back up on stage and together we're going to have a discussion around a table about the power of transformation. As I was thinking about today's session, I think the first thing that struck me is, like many things, what does transformation really even mean? If we look up transformation, the simple reference to transformation is something like a radical, extreme, or dramatic change. And it's often in some character or appearance, something or someone, usually for improvement or making something better. But when we talk about human transformation, we're not talking about the change of things necessarily externally. What we're talking about is an internal shift that provides a clear pathway for people to live up to their full potential and to live their lives with greater purpose, clarity, and passion, which is perfect considering that we're all here really expressing our own passion. Certainly for me, the power of transformation is one of my passions, but specifically my passion for the impact it has on our ability to create an entirely new paradigm of leadership. Personally, for me, I got my own, transformation in that area. I got my first leadership role when I was 27, and in 2005 at 32, I landed my dream job. I got an executive position on the senior leadership team working for the world's biggest media organization. I really felt like I'd made it as a leader. Then 2 years into the job, I had my first child. And by 2010, which was 3 years after that, I'd had 3 kids. And suddenly everything changed for me. I could not see how to make it work with having 3 kids. I thought I must be crazy. And no sooner had I negotiated a part-time job, I was sitting in my office outside the executive boardroom, and when all the team started walking in for the meeting, I wasn't invited. And I noticed that's not all right. So I was annoyed, frustrated, and really resigned about my position there as a leader. And I was standing outside the coffee shop, actually, and I had a colleague ask me about how I was. I really thought, I'm not going to hold back here. I said, you know what? I'm really pissed off. She said, what do you mean? I said, well, suddenly now that I'm part-time, I don't fit the mold for senior leadership. Me too, she said. And I thought, really? So clearly I wasn't alone. And honestly, it really fired me up. 6 weeks later, I had over 53 women in a group, every single one of them are senior women in leadership, emerging leaders, all dealing with the very same problem. How do we advance as leaders despite all of these obstacles, despite the lack of flexibility, the imbalance of women in leadership, the imposter syndrome, so many different issues that we were dealing with? And the thing that really struck me, we were sitting in this room, every single one of us, some were on a call, some of us in the same room. And there was this one woman who I'd known for years who was sharing about the 3 reasons why she was in this group. And every single one of them had one very similar and common thread. And as this woman turned around and said, I just don't feel confident, I honestly couldn't believe it. This is somebody who's traveled the world, one of the most senior journalists, had created an extraordinary career. And at that moment, I took a good look for myself. Was this confidence something that was actually preventing me from also fulfilling on the thing that I was truly passionate about? I've had an extraordinary career as a leader. I accomplished extraordinary things, not only in my career in the media industry, which I did for 23 years. I had the courage to leap out, start a business. 3 months after starting that group, we had this extraordinary event where we brought all these women together, sharing incredible stories. And then 6 months after that, did it again. We had 270 people at this event, and it just was incredible. But as I stood back and looked at the lessons that I learned, there was something for me personally that really made a difference for my own transformation. And surprisingly, it happened after, confronting a particular challenge in my own life. I'd come home from a 12-hour day of facilitating, and as I walked in the door, I confronted the state of the house. It was just a mess, and I was exhausted, and I was really fed up with feeling like I'm trying to do all my best, and every time I come home, there was just so much for me to deal with. So within 2 weeks, I'd taken off to New York, and I remember sitting at the Guggenheim. I'd had a whole day doing the rounds at these art museums, and it was the reflection of different artists that I remember from school that took me back. And I thought, you know what, I used to be really passionate about art. I loved art, and then I never did anything about it. And as I was sitting there overlooking Central Park, I was a mess. I could not hold back my tears. I thought, whatever happened to my passion? I had lost it. I had never gone and pursued the thing that I was truly passionate about. And so as I started to look about what happened, I noticed that, in the first 6 years of my schooling, I went to 6 different schools. And every time I went to a different school, I didn't stay true to what I was passionate about. My number one intention was, what can I do to make friends? So I'd go to one school, I'd look for what they were doing. I'd join the band because they were in the band. And then the next school, I'd join the athletics because the people that I made friends with were in the athletics. But year after year, I would just keep changing to fit in with what I thought was what other people thought was the right thing to be doing. All the meanwhile, giving up on the things that I was truly passionate about. But now here I am, some 40 years later, and I've finally realized that my view of leadership was nothing but an illusion. I took the traditional path, get a good education, get a good job, go to university, work harder, further your studies, get a promotion, then you get a pay rise, and then, eventually one day you become a leader, and I thought I'd made it. But that view of leadership was nothing but an illusion that was holding me back from actually expressing the thing that I was deeply passionate about. And what I was deeply passionate about was actually creating a meaningful connection where the things that were important to me were actually able to be expressed. And the other thing I discovered about leadership is that I'm not alone, and it's not about being a lone soldier, and that surrounding myself with other people who have a commitment to something far bigger than themselves was the thing that made the biggest difference for me. So for me, a leader has become something that's got nothing to do with the position that we have. It has nothing to do with the title. It has nothing to do with the credentials. And although all of those things make a big difference to furthering our own knowledge, it's not the thing that has us express leadership in the world. So my mission really has become about empowering people to actually create, themselves as a leader, to discover that actually real leadership starts from within and within us. And it comes to our ability to be able to show up in every moment, in every day, in every relationship. For me now, leadership is how I show up in my conversations with my kids. It shows up in how I have conversations with the guy at the coffee shop. It shows up in my ability to, with the colleagues I'm with at work. Every single thing in every moment of every day is an opportunity for me to show up as somebody who expresses their passion and to make a real difference in the world. So if there's one thing I leave you with in my personal story, it is this quote from Margaret Mead. And it is that you never underestimate the power of a small group of committed people to change the world, because in fact, it is the only thing that ever has. So with that, I'm going to introduce our very first speaker, Angela Philp. I'm so delighted that Angela could be here in person with us today. Angela actually lives in Toulouse, France. She's the founder of Queen of Possible, and she's up at burning the midnight oil. She's got a focus on women's leadership specifically and personal transformation coaching. Angela's clients reconnect her with her creative energy and accomplish what's really important to them with greater power, joy, ease than they've ever thought possible. So please give a warm welcome for Angela Philp.
Hi, I can see you. Hi, everybody. Hi, Kylie. I want to thank you for that awesome introduction. And I am up burning the midnight oil. I'm here running an awesome conference with women from civil society here in Brussels. And it's really cool to be up burning the midnight oil with you. And so I do want to share a story with you today. And I'm really fired up by your passion, Kylie. In fact, I can really relate to it. And it draws me back to this bee in my bonnet that I have about resilience, because resilience is really my thing. And I had a question. I was wondering if you, or when you first remember knowing that you were resilient, because I think resilience is doing us a disservice. And so I'm wondering for you, is it something that you recognize in yourself? Is it something that you've named your resilience? And I remember the first time that I overcame, that I felt powerful. And I think that's because how we define resilience by overcoming in the face of adversity, bouncing back from setbacks, bouncing back like a rubber band. And I wish I had a rubber band here that I could have, that I could not snap. It's not what we want, but that I could pull. Anyway, it might be hard to believe now, but I want to tell you a story about resilience, about me, a scrawny little thing that I'm saying that would be hard to believe. I was born 6 weeks preemie with the umbilical cord around my neck. Now, I don't remember this. This isn't my first memory, but I was 1.5 kilos and fighting to survive. Right from the start, I was resilient. But my first real awareness that I want to tell you about of being capable and strong and powerful came when I was a little under 5 years old, and I just learned to swim. And my dad, he was a really tough man. So I was born in New Zealand and grew up in Australia, and we had a phrase in our family that was we were tough, and the further up the street you got, the tougher you were, and we lived in the last house. And so I just learned to swim, and I was standing by this river. And my dad looked down at me, and I was not quite 5, and he said, I dare you to swim across the river. And for a big man like him, that didn't look too hard. But for a little thing like me, it was really, it felt like a world away, and it felt really dangerous. And I looked up at him and I said, Dad, what's going to happen if I don't make it? And he looked down at me and he said, well, you'll drown. So I took my courage into my 2 little hands and I dived into that water and I swam across the river, and, spoiler alert, you can see I didn't drown. But that was my first real experience of overcoming adversity and developing resilience. And that became a powerful metaphor in my life of sink or swim. And that sink or swim or bounce back against the odds metaphor that we have dictated my approach to life and its challenges for a long number of years, literally, and it cost me greatly. I actually literally lost everything several times and kept bouncing back again and again and again. And the problem I see with this is it's not just me. It's something like you were saying, Kylie, before. It happens to many women. And it concerns me greatly because it sounds so valiant, rising and overcoming against the odds. We're always celebrating the underdog who rises up and we think it's great and we are rewarded for it. But is it that great? Is that how we should be defining resilience? So I'm 52, and I've had, as I was saying before, I've had my fair share of things to bounce back from. School bullying, that's swimming, school bullying. I've changed countries 4 times. I was in a verbally and then physically abusive relationship when I was young, when I was 21. When it did become physical abuse, I waited for 6 weeks for the bruises to go down before I dared going back to my parents' place. And then when my mum saw it, she guessed, and she sent me to live back in New Zealand with my auntie. And it was in New Zealand where I developed this love of adventure racing. So I'm a real adventure racer. And in this magazine on a friend's shop, friend's mountain biking shop, I saw this bloke with a bike on his shoulder crossing a torrent. And I went, I want to do that. That was me, like real extreme adventure. And I also wanted to work for UNESCO. So I found a way of getting to work over here over at the time in Paris for UNESCO. And I found a way of learning or joining an adventure racing club and getting into adventure racing. And it was a perfect way for me to live the definition of resilience that was bouncing back and surviving. So there's nothing about thriving in it. It was all about bouncing back against the obstacle. And so I kept this adventure racing. I could run 20 kilometers with a stone in my shoe and not stop, not bother my team, keep my mouth shut. And during that time in France, speaking of, just want to run through a few of the obstacles. So my house burnt down, literally to the ground, no worries, bounce back. Had a car accident, rolled the car 3 times with the 2 children in it, no worries, bounce back. And one of my friends said to me on a sailing trip, I think after all of that, there was also divorce. I think a number of us have been through that. It's quite a trial, but no worries, bounce back. And I think when you're talking about defining moments and transformation, Kylie, there were 3 moments where I really thought, is this resilience thing actually doing me any good? The first time was when a friend of mine said that he was the only person I knew who could be seasick and smile at the same time while I was being ill, overboard. And at the time, I remember taking pride at that. And I sort of started thinking afterwards, so is this really who I want to define myself as? And the other 2 defining moments were when I'd been working as a new recruit. When I wasn't working at UNESCO at the time, and I was working as a new recruit and for this conference producing company. And for 3 months, I was working with this manager, John, and the name has been changed to protect his privacy, but that was the voice he spoke to me with. And after 3 months, I just thought I was useless, and I'd been trying and I'd been struggling to get my work right. And I went to the managing director and I said, clearly, I am not made for this job. And I said, I think I have to leave. And she went, oh, no, it's not you. She said, you don't have the problem. She said, we just hired you to be with him because you were the most resilient of the new recruits. Again, you get caught in that sacrifice cycle of always being the one to be identified as someone who can put up with pain. What is that about? And the last one, the real defining moment was when I crossed the finish line of my last adventure race. And it was 475 kilometers of extreme sports. So everything from kayaking 60 kilometers, hiking 100 kilometers. There was all sorts of other sports in there. But the day before the race started, I fell off my bike and I dislocated my shoulder. I didn't realize it dislocated my shoulder. It just hurt. And I continued this race. We did it in 3.5 days with 9 hours sleep. And as I pulled myself across the finish line so I didn't disappoint my team, I really started thinking about what resilience meant, what this bouncing back, what this no worries, you can count on me, I'll do it, no worries, I'll overcome attitude really meant. Because I noticed it wasn't giving me wings and helping me thrive. The definition of resilience that I was living into was actually well, it was a bit like what doesn't kill you make you stronger, but it wasn't making me any stronger at all. It was just keeping me small, stuck, exhausted, and in a loop of being a real sucker for punishment. So I don't know if you can see yourself in any of this, and I know that I don't have the worst stories. I do a lot of resilience work with women in Africa, women refugees in Africa, and I know that I'm not there to teach anyone any lessons. But we've been working together, or I've been working on a whole new definition of resilience that can help us to thrive. Because if we keep defining resilience by this ability to continually bounce back from setbacks, it takes its toll on the women, us who are the carers, the doers, the ones who hold the world on their shoulders. And we start to derive our worth from being a survivor rather than thriving. And we fall into that sacrifice syndrome I was talking about. And we make ourselves work harder. And we keep telling ourselves that by working harder, we'll get different results. And we don't see different results. We just get more and more challenges that we have to overcome. And so if we change that definition of resilience, if we stop considering bouncing back as valiant, and we started defining resilience as being more like water, more like the river, it was the day that I saw resilience in this way that my life really transformed. Because resilience, like the river, is a whole other world of power. And its secret ingredient, what I really realized, the ingredient that's most overlooked, dismissed, and it's minimized every single time in this world of strength, is creativity. So I realized that my resilience didn't come from bouncing back, but from the creativity of finding a way forward, whatever the circumstances. And much like what you were saying, Kylee, as well, it's about banding together, working together. Resilience, we are more resilient when we have a mission like the river, and also when a river is powerful when it's a torrent, when all of those drops join together. So what I want to say is that a river is never confined by its circumstances. It floods if it feels like it. It dries up if it has to. It overpowers with force, but only when necessary. It's not defined by overcoming only, but by moving forward towards something infinitely more powerful and expansive and bigger than her, and collaboratively together. And so I just want to share with you, if I've still got the time, I'll just have a check in the chat because I haven't had a look. I've got a little bit of time. Okay. I want to share with you 3 distinctions that I think will really be helpful to you and that were really helpful to me in redefining resilience for myself. The first one is effort versus struggle. When we're in resilience that is diminishing and saps our energy and disempowers us, it's that we're in struggle rather than effort. And it's a really nuanced feeling inside, an experience to look for. The second one is flow. I'm showing you 3. The second one is flow versus force. Life is always going to have its obstacles, its highs and its lows. But who said that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional? I would really say that I can't remember who it is that said that, but I definitely think that suffering is optional. And as with struggle, if you continually feel like you're forcing, you're likely not on the right track. And if you're swimming with the flow and in the flow, then you're still going to have to exert an effort. So we've got to look at this difference between effort and struggle. And it's a defining line for me every single day of my life now. And the third is cultivating curiosity over certitude. It's the difference between that thought of, I already know how this is going to turn out and I'm going to overcome, or, oh, here we go again, or, oh, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I wonder what I'm not seeing. And what if I asked for help? And what if I was destined for greater? What if there's something further down the track that I'm aiming for rather than this thing that's in front of me that I'm determined to overcome? So today my life actually flows. I have heaps of challenges, but not so many catastrophes. My house has only burnt down once. I don't have I haven't had another car accident. Things seem to be aligning themselves a lot more since I've changed my definition of resilience. I feel now like I am the river and on a mission bigger than me, creator of my life. Unstoppable river with the collaboration of others, showing up in every moment of every day. As you were saying before, Kylie, always showing up, but with some flow, with some creativity. And I want to tell you that you are the river and we are creative and powerful together. And that's leadership. That's resilience. And water always finds its way.
Wow, it's just extraordinary, Angela. There are so many things of really gold in that river that I would love to ask you about. So I'm delighted that we're able to further this conversation when it comes to the round table, where we can actually dig into a lot of valuable things you said. And I certainly find myself a lot, as I'm sure many women do, in the conversation of resilience and how we have to toughen up to think that that's the way through,
Yeah.
So thank you so much for being here and for making it work to be here during the middle of the night where you are. And I'm glad that you're able to stay for a part of the panel too. So we look forward to seeing you again then.
I'll be there.
Thanks,
Kylie.
Okay, so for our next guest and storyteller, we have Shona Bernard-Chandler, who is a consultant. She's based here in Sydney, Australia. Her expertise is in communication, project and team management. She's got over 30 years of experience in human resources and cultural change management. Her skills include facilitation, training and development, analysis and strategic design. Her experience includes consulting internationally throughout Asia, India and America, and she's delivered programs and workshops to over 20,000 people. She's worked closely with all levels of management to design and implement strategies and plans and processes and systems. She's worked extensively with the government departments, private sector, not-for-profit organisations and charities, and she has a degree in HR from Sydney University in Technology. Honestly, this woman for me is an extraordinary human being who has a massive impact in the world and has been for many years a mentor of my own. So it is just with such delight that I'm able to introduce Shona Bernard-Chandler. Please give her a warm welcome.
Thank you, Kylie. I was fairly impressed with what you just said about me. It didn't sound like me at all, though. Look, I woke up this morning and I said to my daughter, I think I'm just going to tell them the truth. And Celeste said, I don't think they'll believe you. You know, who you are right now has nothing to do with who you were. And I think that that's the piece that I want to share about as far as transformation goes, right? Because for me, that's the piece called I don't look anything like how I was when I began this conversation. So, you know, I kind of stumbled drunkenly into transformation in my 20s. Is actually what happened. In fact, I found myself in the Landmark Forum actually because my sister, who I had had a violent kind of upheaval relationship with, had kind of started being nice to me. And it was really weird. And I was there at this course trying to make sure she hadn't got herself into some kind of weird trouble, you know? And when people talk to me about that time, you know, the victory that I lived with was that I actually spent 3 days in a room with 200 people. That's actually the victory for me. But during that time, and believe me, I sat at the exit, right? The door, the chair very closest to getting out of there at any second. I spent a lot of hours in the toilet avoiding other people, right? But what I got out of the conversation for transformation was just one thing, really. I got the past doesn't equal the future. You know, that's it. I got the past doesn't equal the future. And I had a pretty revolting past. You know, I had a past which was full of high-risk behavior, being a criminal, fighting with my family, kind of doing whatever job you needed to do to get by. that kind of a past, right? And pretty much all I knew about myself was that I could survive and that I was certainly not going to inflict my life on anyone else, and I discovered transformation. The past didn't equal the future. And what became available was, I suddenly got a future. Like I didn't have to be that. I didn't have to be what I was the sum of, right? So for me, transformation was really about, if you don't have to be the sum of what you are, what could you be? And the answer is anything. So from then, I'm now 55. My life has been a demonstration of you can be anything, right? And, I'm pretty ordinary. I'm not the smartest person in the room. I'm not the most disciplined. I'm not any of those things. But the one thing I am, and I think that if I was going to leave anyone with what do you need to have a transformed life, is I am courageous, right? I am someone who is afraid, and I'm afraid all the time of stupid stuff. But I can take action in the face of that. And that really is what it takes to live a life of transformation. It takes being courageous every moment. It takes being willing to throw whatever you've got for yourself up so far, throw it up and be willing to be unrecognizable to yourself. So, my life is a miracle. My life is a miracle. The family that I was estranged from for 25, 26 years, it's ridiculous how close and intertwined we are. Those children that I was never going to have because I was never going to repeat the cycle of abuse, my children are just a gift, right? That living in a caravan next to an open sewer, that was my growing up years. I love my life. I live in Sydney. I live in the eastern suburbs. I have a life. That being on the spectrum, so I could never sit still at school. So therefore, I pretty much failed school, now has me lecturing at universities. It's freaky crazy, my life. But really, it's a step-by-step moment about confronting that who I am is a function of my word and nothing else, and that the past does not equal the future. So whatever I did doesn't mean I can't have a new future. So that really is it for me, Kylie. I'm happy to participate in the questionnaire piece, but I'm pretty impressed by who everybody else is actually.
Just likewise. And I'm really moved, firstly, I think by a couple of many things, but a couple of things in particular. The simplicity, I think, that you've created, the real value of transformation, which is that whatever happens in the past does not equal the future. No. And I think that's a very powerful and simple way to say it for all of us, because so many of us get so stuck in recreating the past over and over and over again, not realizing that it's those things that have kept us in place where we are. And, I could find myself a lot in what you shared about, having had an upbringing where, did some bad shit. We all do some bad stuff. As teenagers, we all go a little crazy. Some of us more crazy than others, right? And so I really heard that firstly, and so I really want to thank you.
For Kylie, I did want to. I wanted to say sorry to Angela because I probably was the bully.
Right. There you go, Angela. She's apologizing on behalf of the bully.
All the bullies. That was probably me.
Right. Well, I'm sure we can all find something in that, right? So firstly, I want to thank you for the simplicity and the rigor that you've actually been able to share that. The other thing I really want to acknowledge, and, it's just, again, I think the presence of the miracle that who you are for yourself. and that you said it is something that, you know, is always there for you. You know, like you wake up this morning, you know, it's not about coming in here and having a, you know, a great, wonderful talk to share about, which is all fine, right? And I noticed as you were saying that, I had a very similar experience this morning. You know, I panicked myself about making sure I share the right thing. It was the same thing for me about leadership. You know, leadership looks like what it looks like out here in the world, right? And then try to create from there. But actually then when I woke up, I went, you know what, throw all that shit out, you know, just what's there from the heart. So thank you for really bringing such authenticity, I think, to sharing, you know, your life in particular and your experiences. And now I know that's really just touching the tip of the iceberg also for you. So I'm really thankful that you're actually able to stay for the roundtable discussion, because I'm really interested as we get into the depth of this conversation about transformation, about really putting the spotlight on so many different angles of it so that we can really impact the people that are here today. So is there anything else other than that now that you'd like to add or say?
Oh, so we will be talking about it later, but I want to say the access to transformation, and I really am, if I can do it, anyone can, is communication, right? The access is the languaging we speak to ourselves, the languaging we speak to other people. That is the access to transformation. So if I was going to pick two things, like two tips, courage and communication.
Well, this thing about courage keeps coming up, right? And I'm glad you put those two together, because when we think about courage, you're like, well, in reality, what does that really look like? And you know, you said before, you know, we're always afraid. I remember, like, even this morning, messaging one of the other speakers, I'm like, I am so afraid, you know, like authentically, just I can see what's there is my fear about how that's going to go. And so that correlation between courage and communication, thank you for drawing that parallel. And I have made a note about that, because that's definitely something I want us to talk about in more detail. So thanks for being here again, and looking forward to the chat.
Thanks.
Okay, and now for our next guest is Louise Sullivan, who is joining us from Singapore. And I need to make sure I have my right notes here. Another remarkable human being who I'm so delighted who has joined us today. And it is really, now talk about going from Angela Philp, who's up burning the midnight oil. We have in Singapore, really the early rising bird, who I'm pretty sure it's around 6 a.m. in the morning. So firstly, just want to acknowledge you and any of your guests who are here, or anyone in Singapore who have managed to get up at this such bright hour. Louise is a transformation management consultant. She works with an organisation called the Vanto Group. She has over 20 years of experience in this field. She works directly with CEOs and their teams to reinvent themselves and deliver a future that was never going to happen. So after her own personal transformation in her career, she decided that it was time for her to create a world that works for everyone. So she spent 25 years living in Asia. She speaks Indonesian, Japanese, and Thai, and works in a highly translated environment. And she specialises now in aligning and mobilising teams with diverse backgrounds, cultures, and languages. Firstly, Louise, I just really, and so I think the universe always provides is one of the things I've also discovered about transformation. And, you know, as we came into this journey, you know, many of us all still, if we think about what even Shona says about what shows up in our speaking, here we are, extraordinary human beings making a massive difference in the world. And one of the things that naturally shows up for each of us is, am I in the right place? Should I really be here? I'm not sure I'm the best person to tell my story. So thank you for being up. It's such a bright early of the morning. It is such an honour to have you here. And thank you again for sharing your story. I'm going to leave it with you.
Thank you, Kylie. Kylie, Angela, and Shona, thank you. I'm so moved. So hi from Singapore. I thought I might start my story of transformation at 22. That's where I'm going to pick up my story. So armed with 2 university degrees and language capability in Japanese and Indonesian. I was excited about my future and I was going to change the world. Shown quite a distinct background from yours where I started. I was going to go out and change the world, right? So at 22, I'm on the phone to the graduate admissions department of the Australian government, and I called to find out when my interview might be. Right? The woman on the other end asked me my exam score, and I said, "Oh, I got an 8 out of 10. Remember, I'm going to go change the world, right? There's a big picture here." And she said to me, she laughed, "Oh, honey, without a 9 out of 10, you're not going to get any interview at all." So crushed and extremely embarrassed, I then went on to what would become a decade of proving myself as strong and capable of having international successful career that I'd so wanted. But the more that I tried to prove my competence, the more evidence I seemed to gather that ultimately, sorry, I've got a message. Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me?
Hi, Louise. Sorry to pop back on. Do you have a window open that's playing back the session? Because it sounds like you have an echo.
Oh, sorry.
That sounds better. Whatever you just did sounds better.
I brought my microphone closer. Is that better?
Yes, and I hate to ask you this. Do you mind starting again? Because your story's so powerful. We want to make sure everybody hears every word.
You want me to start again?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Step by step, hey, Shona. So I start again. Where did I start? 22. So I'm 22 and I'm out to change the world. I knew I was going to change the world. Very confident, very ready, armed with university degrees and 2 Asian languages. I'd studied Japanese and Indonesian. I was ready to change the world. So I call the woman who's going to tell me when I'm getting my interview that starts my international career. And when she asks me my score and I tell her I got 8 out of 10, she laughs and tells me, without a 9, I'm not going to get any kind of interview at all. So at that moment, I was really crushed, very, very embarrassed, and set out and said, right, I'm going to have to prove myself. And I spent a decade out to prove myself. I really did. But the more I tried to prove my competence, you know, just like Angela was sharing about the resilience, the more you prove resilience, the more stuck she found herself. Well, the more I tried to prove my competence, the more evidence I seemed to gather that ultimately, here's what I saw. Ultimately, I'm just a stupid girl. Not stupid. You know, many of us have that stupid thing. I was a stupid girl, a very specific kind of stupid. I'll give you what I mean. Too emotional, way too irrational, head in the cloud, and never quite seemed to know like the right thing to say. So that stupid girl then collected evidence for a long time. Like I said, I went around collecting evidence. In fact, it seems like I'd been collecting evidence long before the day I was told I wouldn't get an interview. So I was looking in prep to share with you today what kind of evidence I collected. Here was some. My grandfather, his favorite line when watching the football and all Australians here, football Saturday, that was what happened, okay? My grandfather would yell at the TV. You're playing like a pack of girl guides is what he'd yell. Well, I was a girl guide. I wore a blue uniform with those little badges that you used to get for completing skills and doing community services. But clearly being a girl guide wasn't something to be proud of. And then when I set out to prove my international career, I worked in a global law firm in Bangkok. And one of the partners I worked with in the banking and finance division, he used to introduce me to other people by saying I was hired and kept around because I looked great in a short skirt. That's why I was hired. That's why I was kept around. I worked for a media advertising company where one day when I expressed an uncertainty about a job I was doing, he told me under no uncertain terms, never to bring my insecurities to work again. So I got that as I built my career, I desperately needed to hide being a stupid girl. And how I hid was to be strong. Angela, right in that world. Be resilient, be strong, tough it out. In fact, when I got threatened, then I'd get forceful. And then the feedback I got was I was intimidating. So I worked on one project on an all-male capacity building project in the construction industry in China. I don't know if you just take a moment to get that, the construction industry in China. We were doing eradicating corruption. And my all-male team named me Madam Lash because I was too bossy. They all called me Madam Lash, not by my name. So by 30, I had it all on the face of it. I had an international job. I had an apartment in Sydney. I had a wonderful, sensitive man to share my life with. That's what I wanted. Supportive friends, family who love me. And yet I was deeply unfulfilled. And the difference that I thought I was going to make in the world seemed further out of reach than ever before. And I found myself sad and angry for no reason. And I couldn't work it out. And I was embarrassed to be sad and angry when I had it all. And then I started dealing with ongoing health issues. So I started experimenting. At 30, I started experimenting with transformative modalities. And just like Shona, that search culminated in me participating in the Landmark Forum, which was the most transformative experience of my life. And in 3 days, what I got in a conversation for transformation was an opportunity to rewrite my future. For the first time, I saw for myself that actually maybe, just maybe, I was more than a stupid girl. Or maybe I could just be a stupid girl and I could contribute to the world working at the same time, right? And I got connected to what was possible for human being. And despite all the suffering and all the injustice and all of my personal inadequacies, maybe I could participate in the world working. And I discovered for myself the power of conversation, exactly like Shona said. Conversation, communication, conversations to share like we're having today, conversations to connect, conversations to heal. I was moved to tears by hearing, Kylee, Shona, and Angela. And conversations to move us into productive action, which are what I'm interested in, conversations that move us into productive action. So that was 20 years ago. And with the privilege of now having been coached by the best people in the industry, I discovered really 3 key things I wanted to share about personal transformation. These are my key 3 things. Transformation is a mountain with no top. There's always this gap. And just when I think I got something sorted out, there's something else to deal with. Something else arises and threatens and pokes the stupid girl. And then I look at that again. There's another layer. Secondly, when I make it about me personally, I lose power. But when I make it about others, I'm empowered. I get power. And thirdly, and most importantly, and I think this is Shona what you were pointing to, life's a conversation. It's all a conversation. So it's up to me, you, us, moment by moment, to choose every day which conversation we're going to honor and participate in. So they're my 3 things of my journey of transformation. Thank you.
Wow. Well, thank you for moving me and the rest of us. And I'm really glad we picked up the echo in the background so we could actually hear you. So well done on turning yourself just straight back in there. Well done. There's, again, so many extraordinary things, I think. The one that I do want to unpack a little bit more when we get in the roundtable is one of the things that you said at the end about a mountain with no top. And whilst kind of can get what you were saying, I do think there's a world in which that kind of creates something. So I am going to ask us to share more about that in the roundtable. But the other thing that's come out of your sharing also, I think, is the power that happens that we have as children as we grow up in the things that we say, in the decisions that we make about ourselves. And your decision of being a stupid girl off the back of the behavior was your grandfather, right? Was it your grandfather?
Yeah.
Watching that show and, calling it out like that. So it wasn't even something that was directed at you, right? And yet the decision that you made about that then shaped who you became for yourself and that entire trajectory of attempting to prove yourself. So, of course, I heard a lot for myself in that about being girl, because who I was for myself was a bad girl. But I think there's also so much there, I think, that all of us can take about seeing if we didn't have to be that decision and that decision no longer shaped who we are, then what? And so I can see the connection even for yourself about how you've landed in a world where it's about rewriting a completely new future for people, like when you get that power. So thank you so much for sharing your story and being here. And again, I'm really glad that you were able to stay for the discussion. Is there anything else you wanted to say about that? Or
No, thank you for the privilege of being here.
Yeah, great. All right, thanks, Louise. Okay, for our next guest, we have Raquel Medrano Clemente, who is a transformational and leadership coach. She has over 2 decades of experience in building and reinventing businesses from the ground up. She works with corporate executives and business owners and helps them to expand their leadership, align their organizations, transform their relationships with what is possible, and to achieve unprecedented results. Now, we have been talking a lot over the last few years about unprecedented times. But, what does it actually look like when we talk about the causing of unprecedented results? Raquel's worked across a variety of different industries, from construction, mining, banking, education and finance, and has an extensive experience and knowledge also in the not-for-profit sector. And she sat on many boards for education and not-for-profits, including chair positions. So I'm really delighted today to be able to invite Raquel up to share some of her story and her passion for transformation, and certainly also the way she's able to cut across cultures. So please join me in welcoming Raquel.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me here. What a privilege. Well, you will hear, I have an accent. So I am from South America, and I have been in Australia for 20 years. So look, my story, I relate to so much on what has been shared already. And I was born 2 years into a military coup in Argentina. So that just from the beginning. Then after that, a war broke out in my country. I am a child of immigrants, survivors, war survivors. And I was born into a narrative of struggle. And when I say narrative, I tie back to what already Louise and Shona have said. There was this conversation in my life about struggle. In my family, you didn't get what you wanted. You didn't even get to want anything. And at the age of 15, I had to start working to help my family financially. I considered dropping out of school. It just got a bit too hard, but I decided against it. And my grades started falling dramatically as a result. I was in middle school, working 2 jobs, evenings and weekends, sleeping sometimes 4 hours a night and falling asleep in class. And I hated that because I used to love school. I was a really good student. But I was lucky compared to my mom, who had to leave school at the age of 9, and she was put to work. And her mom only went to school until the age of 7. My father's mother, on the other side, whom I never met, never learned how to read or write. I was the only girl in my family, and it became clear to me that my role was to be of service. And my highest value as a woman was my image. I had to be pretty and thin. So one day, someone would want to marry me. So marry I did, not because I wanted to, but because it seemed to matter to everyone around me and to be the natural next step. I had 4 kids, my choice and my pride, and I immersed myself in the life of the perfect wife and the perfect mother. We moved around the world with his work, and I adapted. But soon after my youngest turned 2, I just couldn't take it anymore. I was so unhappy. I didn't know what my life was about, but I knew for a fact that this wasn't it. I loved and I still love being a mom above all things. But man, I had lost myself in that never-ending role of supporting others, as we women do sometimes. Certainly I did. I lost count of how many dreams I didn't allow myself to dream, going to university, having a career, expressing myself freely in a world that got me for who I was. And instead, I tried too hard to mold myself into a life that seemed to be the only alternative. 10 years ago, I was 34. That year, my mom died. And after years of therapy, my marriage ended. I lost my house, everything I had. I found myself in a foreign country, raising very young children in a foreign language, in a foreign culture. And I was facing a new beginning. It's hard for me to explain the process of transformation, but look at a butterfly. In order to become a butterfly, the caterpillar sets camp and it builds a cocoon and commits to falling apart completely. It decomposes down to its very essence. And from this state, the butterfly starts to put itself together. To transform, we must allow ourselves that self that we think we are to disappear so that a new self can emerge. But again, I'll say it again, you have to be brave, you have to be courageous, because transformation is not change. The caterpillar doesn't become a bigger caterpillar or a faster caterpillar. It becomes something but a caterpillar. And that is the beauty and the risk of transformation, because life as you know it is no more. It was around this time in my life that I was introduced to the work of transformation, the same as the others here. I did the Landmark Forum. And I got to see for the first time ever that I didn't need to be defined by my story or my circumstances, that I did have a say in how my life went from then on, that I didn't need a university degree to have value as a person, that having kids didn't mean that I was stuck in life with no choice. I discovered that I could create myself newly moment by moment, no matter what life threw at me. So I decided to start a business. I built a house. I started investing. I studied new things. I met someone with whom I could see myself building a life again. Only a couple of years into that relationship, he died. And my body didn't cope with the grief all too well. So I developed a chronic health condition. I put on 20 kilos, which is 40 pounds for you, all of you in America. And then the pandemic hit, and while all of that could have driven me to a constant space of disempowerment, I found myself creating myself newly over and over again. I grew my business. I joined boards. I studied with an American elite business school. And I even reached out to one of the top transformational consulting firms in the world. And I said, hey, I'd love to work with you. And they said, yes. So I joined them this year. I became the parent of 4 teenagers. And I love it. I constantly ask myself, what's next? And I create a future that pulls me into action at any point. I don't get stuck anymore. I create opportunities rather than wait for them to show up, not only for myself, but for others. And now I am free to be a contribution to others, not from a place of service, but as an opportunity, rather than a burden or an obligation. And I also get to be the space in which others see a new future for themselves and create. I actually made that my life's purpose through my work as a transformational coach. And I am so fortunate to have daily conversations like this one for what's possible, not only with individuals, but with entire organizations. Conversations that not only change the world, but create a brand new one. Thank you.
Wow, just amazing. Thank you so much, Raquel. I really loved the analogy that you used about the caterpillar. And I think it really serendipitously captures the heart of so many of our stories about that journey of stripping back the protective layers and things that we've put around us to almost create some kind of armory and what we think. That was kind of the first thing. But the other thing that I really noticed too was kind of the influence of our environment, you know, on the decisions that we make to take the path that we take. And it's as though that environment creates that shell initially around us as a caterpillar. And at some point we go, actually, that's not the heart of my own beauty. You know, it's so really beautifully and eloquently captured. So thank you so much. And so many things that I actually have what you shared too about the contribution you've become to others and in service of others without the personal sacrifice. And I think I heard a lot of that for myself too, you know, and that commitment to leadership, that when we get that, it's not only over here with us. And when we transform our own life, suddenly we get that actually it's not going to work if the people around us are also not taken care of. So that also was a standout in your sharing. So thank you so much. And can't wait to get you into the round table. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, for our next guest, we have Georgiana Koval, who I'm absolutely, again, delighted she can make it here today. Georgiana is an international sales and performance coach. She's the founder of Millions of Women Strong. She's an author, speaker, and all-round, as she calls, badass, who's worked with women all around the world to ignite their inner warrior and make a difference that they're here to make. She's used to working her butt off, having worked for a personal development leadership training company for years. But then she hit the glass ceiling. The organisation that helped others reach their full potential wasn't actually going to allow her to reach hers. So she did what any entrepreneurial person would do, and she quit and she started her own business. And she now has a specific mission to empower women, specifically female entrepreneurs all over the world, to play a bigger game, achieve what she calls their soul-stirring goals, and get more money in the hands of women. Well, I say bring it on. So, Georgiana, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you, Kylie. Well, we've talked a lot. You've heard a lot of people talking about how our past has impacted our future. And so I want to drop you into early in my 30s. I was working for a company. I had been in the interior design field. And so I was sitting there one day and my boss walked into the showroom in her usual style and starts yelling at me at how horrible I've been, how wrong everything is. And it really had been that way since day one. But I took it because, you know, it's as good as it's going to get for me. I started my career as a hairdresser, and now I'm a manager showroom. I should be grateful. I should take what I get. With only a high school diploma, being a manager is good, right? And as I stood there in front of her, taking her insults, as she stands there and complains and screams at me, something came over me. And for the first time in a year, I spoke back to her. And what I said was, I quit. I walked out. I was liberated. I was feeling free, alive, and oddly accomplished. 10 a.m. the next day, I'm sitting on that dingy brown shag carpet in my dark rundown duplex with tears streaming down my face. I see my bank account balance in my mind's eye. I'm like, oh my God, what have I done? I don't even have enough money to pay my rent in a month for this awful place I call home. Waves of fear, waves of excitement are running through me. But honestly, it's mostly fear. What have I gotten myself into? How am I ever going to do this? Who am I to think that I can start a business? The tears continue to stream down my face, and I'm shaking my head. My head is in my hands. I'm in disbelief. I'm a mess. And in a moment, I begin tearing myself down with that oh too familiar negative self-talk. God, you're such an idiot. You're so stupid. Now, I'm 15. I'm sitting at the dining room table, and sitting beside me is my math tutor, Matt. Everyone said I should be able to understand geometry, but I just don't get it. And Matt had one question for me. What don't you understand? I stared at him blankly. How am I supposed to answer that question? And in my head, I tell myself, God, Georgiana, you are such an idiot. You're so stupid. At 22, in the kitchen with my mom, sharing with her about the career and the challenges I'm having, as she stirs the pot of the soup on the stove for our family dinner, she turns to me with a sweet smile on her face. Oh, honey, don't worry about all that. You'll find a man and he'll take care of those things. Now, would you please just go set the table? I guess my mom also knows that I'm stupid and I can't do it myself. I need a man to take care of me because I don't have what it takes to do it myself. And at 25, I tell my dad, a successful stockbroker, that I want to get a credit card. Absolutely not. You don't need a credit card. Don't ever get one. Now I know, my dad even knows the truth. I'm stupid and I can't do it myself. So I went back to doing life, waiting for my prince, you know, the one that shows up on the beautiful white horse to carry me away to this life so I don't have to worry about the things. But something shifted that day on that dirty brown shag carpet. I had to get real, that there may be nobody coming. Either I was going to live on the streets or I was going to double down on my vision of becoming my own boss. If I want to have the house, a life, fun, travel, it's up to me. It's not a job, and it's definitely not some man that may never come. I had to let go of the conditioning and the beliefs that I needed to be saved. Let go of the belief that I'm stupid. The pain of staying the same had begun bigger than the pain of change. And the next day, I get up. I do all the things that a business owner should do. This was before social media, so I got on the phone. I started talking to people. I called my family. I called my friends. Who do you know? What should I do? Can you help me? And I looked into networking events and chambers of commerce and small business. I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. I had to make this work. I had to at least make enough money to pay my rent in a month. But it started working. I talked to enough people that I finally found some of them that needed my help and became my clients. What I thought I lacked in intelligence, I made up by being scrappy, unstoppable, and fearless. I was unstoppable. And in month 3, in my hand was a check addressed to me for $22,000. I did it. I freaking did it. Now I'm back on the carpet with tears streaming down my face, but this carpet is brand new. It's attached to my brand new home. Tears of joy that I can't hold back. It's my new home. It's everything I've always dreamed of. I did it. The hairdresser turned fitness instructor, turned receptionist, turned cocktail waitress, turned bartender, turned furniture saleswoman, turned manager, did it. The pride, the courage, the power that I learned on that journey is the transformation that I will never forget. And I'm now on a mission, as Kylee said, to get more money into the pockets of women so women can also know that they're unstoppable and they can do anything that they want.
I'm sitting here trying to high five and fist pump, well done you, pride, and sitting on that brand new carpet. So great. And so many fabulous things. Again, some added things that I think we haven't kind of put the spotlight on yet. But I think the one that was really a standout for me, Georgiana, was the thing that you were saying, which landed for me around accountability. That it really was who you had was, it was up to me. There ain't anyone coming. And I'm sure there's been plenty of women in the world who raised in an environment where somehow we think that getting married and, that will just provide and, but that still undermines who we are for ourselves. And, so really extraordinary, I think, obviously outcome. And at the same time, there was another thing you said about, that transformation, you never get over. You just never get over. And I think that's, if we look at everyone's sharing, it's very evident that when you've had that transformation, there are moments in your story that you just never forget, those crystal clear moments. So firstly, thank you so much for creating such a rich story. It was just, I was right there. I felt like I was with you, in the kitchen with your mum stirring the soup, and just really, really fabulous. So looking forward to getting into asking you some more stuff and in the conversation of transformation. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have our final speaker of the day, and then we're going to be jumping into our roundtable discussion. And, they often say save the best for last, but, whilst that's certainly we're all the best here, I'm really delighted to be able to complete today with our final speaker, JJ Ferrari, a change agent and keynote speaker. So JJ was at 53, was a successful career in business and transitioned her gender from male to female. She says it was the biggest challenge she's ever set for herself, and yet there were many more that she had to overcome. JJ is somebody who tells her story to audiences all over the world. In the process, she teaches people to harness the power of transitions and really to rethink life's rules in both their personal and their professional spheres. With passion and conviction, she provides a range of strategies, models, and formulas that she draws on from an incredibly successful 30-year career as a business leader, but combines that with her personal life experiences. Really a remarkable human being. So I'm really delighted to welcome to the stage, give a warm welcome, please, to JJ Ferrari.
Thank you so much, Kylee. My name is JJ Ferrari, and I do not know how to follow the magnificent stories and the magnificence of all the knowledge that we got from all those women that actually came before me just now. And I hope that what I'm going to share with you might give you some ways to be able to take that knowledge and to start to implement it into your own life. I'm not sure where you are in your own transformation journey or really what you need to hear today. And in the next few minutes, I may actually create more questions in your mind than I do answers, but that's okay. I'm not really going to share too much about my own journey today, but my journey living is male as well as female. It's really taught me a lot of lessons, a lot of big lessons. And one of the biggest ones for creating transformative success was actually learning that the starting point of all success is not actually a goal, it's actually a question. And the reason that questions work better to start your transformative goal or transformative journey is because questions have a tendency to open up our minds and give us new answers that we might not have considered if we just set a goal and started working at it. So today I want to share with you a question that I've asked many of my audiences, and it's simply this: what do you do to transform into a better woman or man? I came up with a lot of answers, and my audiences always come up with a lot of answers, and maybe even instantly you came up with a few as well. But here's the right answer. The right answer is nothing. No one can do anything to become a better woman or man. And it sounds strange at first. And it was strange when it first popped into my head. I was like, what? I'm looking for answers to remove the losses and pains that I'm experiencing in my transition. And this is the answer that I get. I can't become a better woman or man. And when I started to look at the answers that I'm about to share with you, it really changed me as a person, and it changed my life vision. So what is a better answer to creating a great transformation? I would argue that there are two. One that will give you what you want for yourself, and the other that facilitates what we all want to see in the world. So here's the first one. Be willing to become a better person. Sounds like the same thing, but it's actually really, really different when you hear it. Being willing to do whatever you need to do to become a more self-aware and self-intelligent person. See, the majority of us never take time to make sure that we know our inner selves. Being a woman or a man alone does not mean that you know yourself. Neither does being successful or meditating, nor does taking personal development courses or even being a good person. None of those mean that you know yourself. And if you don't do the hard work of actually learning to know yourself, there's nothing powerful enough inside you to put up a battle when life gets incredibly tough. It's why we see so many people actually dealing with anxiety and depression. But the real reason I believe that there's so much inner conflict is because we're walking around like sponges, absorbing media, situations, information, and energies. The outer world is filling us up. It's drowning our powerful inner self, and we feel it, but we don't know how to combat it. So self-awareness lets you know how you feel and who you are. It lets you fill yourself up with courage and confidence and creativity and communicative styles, as Angela had actually mentioned earlier. But the two best ways of creating greater self-awareness, you're not going to want to hear, because they are honesty and vulnerability. Being honest with yourself is super difficult, and it's why, most of us aren't willing to do it. Also being vulnerable, open to hearing and seeing what others say to you about you. For most people, too emotional. It bruises their ego. And again, it's why we must be willing to do it. We must face ourselves to gain strength and inner fortitude. So why do we need strength and inner fortitude? Because the second idea is to become a better human. To become a better human means to have a vision, one that serves to help other people. And a vision is huge. It's something that you can clearly see and have a burning commitment to achieve, but you've got no idea how to achieve it or how long it's actually going to take to reach it. I think it's what we're actually doing here today. Amy and Nancy's Passionistas is their vision for changing the world. To achieve it, we all need more strength and fortitude, because we don't know how long we're going to have to keep going. Is changing the world for women part of your personal goals and your life mission? It has to be, for us to see it all the way through. But I think that we're at our best when we're around people who believe what we believe. It sort of stacks the deck in our favor and puts us all in a better position of power. It's not going to be easy, even with all of us standing together. That's why we also need to help men become willing to be better persons and humans. But we're not going to do it with our words. We're not going to do it with our anger, but we're going to be able to do it through our passion and our examples. So I don't know if you've ever heard of the author Kenneth Keyes or his theory of the 100 monkeys. His research showed that when 100 or more monkeys begin to exhibit a new behavior in one part of the world, monkeys around the planet who have no contact with the original 100 monkeys begin to exhibit the same behaviors. Now, I'm certainly not saying that we're monkeys. I am saying we, women and men, are all connected. There's a connective energy that we cannot control, but that we can count on to make this idea of worldwide change a reality. But we have to take the consistent actions that change each of us into better persons, and we will then begin to see more and more humans, women and men, exhibiting the same actions around the world. So if all you need to do is become a better person and then make part of each day being human and helping others, why don't we all just do it? I think the answer is because we believe we have to fight for what is rightfully ours. And most people do not like conflict, do not like confrontation. So instead, we have to make sure that we lead others to realize that we have the ability to influence the changes that we want to see. And when we do, more people will actually engage with us, and it will begin to happen sooner. My name is JJ Ferrari, and thank you for letting me play.
You play anytime. Just love you so much. Just really thank you. And a couple of things I want to call out before we jump into the panel. And, I noticed that this is the first time I've really noticed this about one of the things that draws a connection between you and I. And that's the powerful place that you and I have in a world that is able to straddle two worlds. So it's a really, I find it an incredibly empowering experience to be able to talk with somebody like yourself who spent a large part of your life as a man. And then you've got such richness in your experience of having transitioned as a woman, and now you're in that environment. And it gives you a very unique perspective about those two worlds. And it was the first time this morning today that I've noticed that's this, why that resonates so much for me is because it is the same for me. I've spent the majority of my life as, and I still am very technically white and look like for most people I live a privileged life, which I do. And yet I'm Black. I am an Indigenous woman and not just any Aboriginal woman, but I've been raised, my ancestors are from the stolen generation. So we have a long history of trauma. And so that's not always obvious to the external eye, but it gives me a very unique position, and it gives you that same position to really fight for something that I think is very powerful.
And Kylee, the thing is that when I was living my male life, I actually didn't know a lot of these things. I didn't know that what I was living, I was actually living what I thought I knew about women, right? But when you actually move over and start living a female life, because I actually don't call myself a woman, as you know, because I think that that's a really big privilege. And maybe in 25 years, of my transition, I'll probably call myself that. But I've had to learn so much about the unique differences of women and what their path is. And you don't get that as a guy. It's why this meant so much to me to be able to say this is you have to find a way to start influencing and encouraging men to become part of this and open up their eyes. Because let's face it, if men really understood women or women really understood men, there'd be a whole lot less divorce, right? Or a whole lot more lesbians and gay guys, right? So I think it's really important that we learn about each other. And I think that that's really a part of what my journey has helped me to do. So I hope that that comes across.
Yeah, absolutely does. And I know there's one other thing at the heart of what you do too is, and I think you spoke volumes to it when you mentioned the, being a better person right? And that can sound incredibly simple, but the thing that I think you grounded it on around honesty and vulnerability, and knowing that everything that we do as a human being, with every action and every thought and speaking, etc., does have energy around it, and it amplifies in the world. And we most of us, for the most part, sit in our worlds as if somehow all of that stuff has no effect on the world, and so we keep it up. So I really love your call out there around being a better person. Well, we're going to jump into the roundtable now so we can keep going on this conversation. I just do want to let you know and everyone know that I know some people may need to jump off, and if you need to do that, I completely understand, especially those like Angela who are up in the middle of the night. Technically speaking, we were here for 90 minutes. We've just hit that. But I want to let you know, for those who are able to stay, we certainly want to keep the conversation here on the roundtable for about 20 minutes. We can keep it going for, roughly. And I do want to, if those of you do need to jump off, I want to give you the first opportunity really to just create something in response, I guess, to the sharing. But before we do that, I just want to check that we have a couple of people that we can't see right now. One of them is Shona. I just want to check if she's here and still in. Yay, here we go. Okay, great. So look, as you can all see, there was so many extraordinary stories told. And so I want to throw by starting, and there's so many different things that I pulled out that are really incredibly valuable to start to talk about. I want to throw one question in particular to start us off. And Angela, I know that given you're in the middle of the night, if there's something that you can see that you'd want to be able to put a spotlight on, please go for that first. And I'm going to start with this one. Hearing what you did in other people's stories, what was it that you noticed that really resonated for you in what you heard in their stories that you found really powerful about the power of transformation?
I know what I heard was that it's ongoing and that it takes courage and that you can come from anywhere, that it's not defined by your past. I really picked that up from Shona again. I mean, it's something that I knew, something that we've worked with, but it's just we are never defined by our past. So every new second is an opportunity to transform, and it takes courage.
Yeah, I think there was courage was definitely something shared by a lot of people. I think actually, if we look, I think that word came up a lot, courage and fear. And on that one, I think I might throw to Shona on this one specifically, because whilst everyone brought it up, I think I want to open up that door now on the relationship between courage and communication. So why don't we start with you on that one, Shona? You want to open the door a little bit about that, what that really means?
Thanks, Kylie. I've just listened to everybody else, and I'm in awe of the extraordinary human beings that everybody that's spoken is. And mostly my opinion about myself is not that. Mostly my opinion is I'm just ordinary mum trying to work out who I am day to day. And so having lofty ideas sometimes is a challenge for me, like wanting to change the world or make zillions of dollars or any of those things. That's a little bit big on my plate sometimes, sometimes getting my clothes on, not inside out, is the victory of the day, right? So for me, a really powerful relationship to transformation is, it's okay, Shona. It's okay. You don't need to be you don't need to be extraordinary. You don't need to be amazing. You don't need to be any of those things. You can be ordinary you. And if you're just willing to be ordinary you and take actions towards what you're committed to, or your best self, take actions towards your best self, then that's enough. Right. And that's why for me, courage is the most vital of tips, you could say. Right. rather than anything else, right? Because everybody can do it. That's the first piece. But then the second piece around communication is, you know, I don't think we live here in our bodies, right? Like we have bodies, you know, that we operate from, but I think that we live in the conversations we have with others, right? And I think one of the hardest things to do is and most courageous things to do is to have a conversation with another that puts you at risk, that you're vulnerable, right? That you're authentic, right? That you could look stupid, all of those things. And I think that courage to be in that kind of communication gives other people the freedom to be courageous and be in communication with you and others, right? So that really is where communication comes from me. It really is an access, because I never want to talk. I'm an introvert. I'm on the spectrum. I never want to be in a relationship because it is the moment in which I'm going to screw up. But the willingness to be in communication is, you know, one of the most awesome and courageous things, and always leaves me moved by who human beings are, right? So that's really the first thing. And then I think the second piece is, right, don't fool yourself. We don't create with anything other than communication. You know, human beings do a lot, but we don't create or cause with anything other than communication. And one final thing, sorry, because I'm talking too much now. You know, what's the alternative? See, you know, we're looking at the world right now, and there's a lot of stuff going on, mostly war at some level, you know, individual or global. The only other alternative to communication is war. That's it for human beings. Either we communicate with each other or we fight. And so for me, I'm like, get the communication out there. Sorry, that's enough now.
That's absolutely brilliant. And I could say so much about that, certainly between the seeing of, are you either communicating or you're at war? Yeah, I think, it's absolutely resonating for me on that one. I'm going to draw to anyone else who would like to make that comment. And one of the things that I did hear, though, that stood out, something around your saying about the best selves, is where you started. So I might actually flick firstly, if there's anything you have to say on this, where we're at so far, JJ, is to bring to you on this, because it was something that in your story, that was the thing that you put the spotlight on, was actually this is about being the better person of ourselves. Is there anything for you in this one?
I love what everybody was talking about in their presentations, because here's what I saw. Everybody's out here talking, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, you're telling your story. But the only way that you can be out here telling your story is you've been in your head talking to yourself, right? And we heard some of the stories saying, I called myself stupid, I called myself stupid girl, or I called myself this, or I called myself that. But at some point, every single one of us has said to that voice, shut the fuck up. Right? Because I'm sick of hearing you, and that's not truly who I am. And so that's the only way that you can actually start that going forward. Am I really that voice? Is this really all there is? And I think I actually heard Georgina say that, right? Is this everything that it is? Is this all I'm going to end up being? And we start with those questions, and we start pushing those other voices out. And most people don't realize that you can evict those voices out of your head anytime you want. And that is truly how you actually start to become a better person, is giving yourself that honest conversation. Not once. You can't do it once. You have to do it every single day until you start to see your world giving back to you what it is you want in your life. If you're not willing to do that, then you better be willing to settle for what you're actually getting, because that's all there is.
Great. Well, given that you mentioned Georgiana on this one, I'll pull that one out specifically. I know, Georgiana, in your story, there was a point where you said really, that you almost in a moment made a decision to just stay stuck, because for yourself was, this really is as good as it's going to get for you. So over to you to share about what you're hearing in this and what there is for you to contribute.
Yeah, thank you. you know, I really remember that moment where this is as good as it's going to get. You know, I had all the past that so many people have talked about, all the past things that I had been told and had tons of evidence for, that I was never going to measure up or be successful, or, you know, I'm an introvert as well, be able to be out there in front. And that moment when I realized it didn't have to be that way changed my life forever. I mean, that's what we're talking about here, transformation. But I think, and every moment since then, like every moment since then, I have been out to honor that moment and to make that available for everyone. But I really do think, I mean, I think Shauna talked about the Landmark Forum, but certainly that anything is possible when people get that anything is really possible, that we don't have to be stuck with who we think we've become like it's the truth about us. And certainly, I'm stupid isn't something that left right there. It did. I mean, it hasn't left. It's one of those things that arises all the freaking time. But I don't have to let it run me.
That perfect segue. I think, you know, you what you've pulled out there very much was at the heart, I think, of Louise, your story, and the decision that you made about, you know, being a stupid girl, and how, you know, I think even at one point you did say, you know, that I can be a stupid girl and I can create. And then you topped it at some point with saying that, you know, transformation for you is a mountain with no top. So I think it's a perfect place to kind of open that conversation about this mountain with no top.
Yeah, it's never it, like, okay, that's it, I'm done, thank you, see you later. There's always something. And I think as soon as I think something's handled, I stop asking the questions that JJ was talking about. If I think something's done, then there's the questioning stops, right? So that's what I mean by a mountain with no top. For me, as soon as I stop asking questions about what else might be possible, what else is missing, what's the gap, what am I not seeing, what can I not see, what else would make a difference here with others, me? If I stop asking that question, then I might just default to what that stupid girl or whatever decision has been there for the rest of my life. You know, the other thing that I thought was really great that's related, I think for me, the challenge has been to distinguish between it's up to me, which Georgiana said, and I loved that. It's up to me. The thread I heard in every one of our stories is there's ultimately some form of personal responsibility to walk through and go beyond whatever our circumstances were. Raquel, Shona, Georgiana, JJ, Kylee, each of us had a particular set of circumstances where we could have been a victim to that. And then there was an element of personal responsibility. It's up to me. But I'd like to share with you that what I've had to deal with is that's distinct from I'm on my own. It's up to me is distinct from I'm on my own. And I think that's a really, really big lesson I continue to learn. It's up to me, personal responsibility. I'm on my own. Georgiana said in one thing, you said, it's up to me, and I reached out and asked for help. Like those two things sometimes don't go together. And I think that's a really ongoing learning point that I have that I'm continually looking for. Just because it's up to me doesn't mean I'm on my own. What requests can I make? What community can I engage in to continue this thing called transformation or continue this thing called creating a world that works. It's not up to me. I can't do anything alone, but together we can create something. And yet it's up to me. That's like a paradox in a way.
I mean, transformation's full of paradoxes, right?
Right.
But, you know, I wasn't sure what was going to come out of that. So one of the things that I do want to jump to next, though, is there's something about Raquel saying about, putting attention on others without sacrificing self. But before we do jump to that, I actually just want to jump back to Georgiana, just on this point about it is up to me, but it really is about, the bringing of people around you. And Georgiana, you've built around you in the US, you've started a company called Millions of Women Strong. Your business model is all about collaboration and getting business women together in order to have them really deal with this part of it. So from your point of view, what is it that you're seeing there in terms of its relationship to transformation?
Well, I think it's huge. So first off, inside of the paradigm that business is, right, there's a lot of competition, just struggle on, get it done, all of that. And what we probably all know is that when we step out of competition and embrace collaboration and partnership, there's a whole nother world available for what we're up to, accomplishing, achieving. And, and that's really what I found. Now, it's been a challenge. It's a challenge because there's a whole thing about how women are with women and men with men, right? The competition and all of that. And I think in Australia, you call it the tall poppy syndrome. All of that has really been a challenge to, I don't even know how to call it, but to really have people see, for women, especially men's and women's group, to have women see that together we're stronger. And it really, like the results that we've produced together it really is extraordinary. So I hope that answered.
Yeah, it really does. And I think what I'm hearing in what you've just created is that, in fact, every single person on this panel today, you could say, is carving out some new future in some particular domain, and of course in that is always going to be some challenge, because the very nature of the fact that we're carving out a new future says that there's been something at place that actually has not had that be present, right? And in your field, you're talking about this area of collaboration. Now, I know for others, I know Shona, for example, is in the area of decision making. I think it was Angela, who's, in the field of resilience. My thing's about a new thing in leadership. And so, JJ, you had something you just want to add there. I'm going to come over to you next, Raquel.
So I just want to talk about what Georgiana just said. There is a difference between men and women. And I can tell you that there is. In men's world, right, you've got an alpha, and then you've got emulators and challengers. That's a man's world, right? And that's what they live in. But they've learned to live a little bit more harmoniously, knowing who they are. Do they call themselves that? They don't call themselves that. But how does an alpha get stronger? An emulator challenges them, right? Or a challenger challenges them. And it makes the challenger stronger, it makes the emulator stronger, and it also makes the alpha stronger. So their scenario actually works for men, okay? As stupid as it sounds, because what I've learned since I've stepped over to gender line is boys are dumb, right? It's really funny, but it's the truth. But when you look at
women, you are a woman. If you know that, I mean, that was a joke.
It didn't take too long to figure that one out. But here's the thing. Here's the women's model. Women have always flown together. Have you ever seen a flock of geese? Women fly together. They have always flown together. Here's the difference. When women take turns going to the front and moving each other, right? But we're still at this evolution where we're learning how to actually complement each other and not feel the sense of envy that actually goes along with seeing women actually grow into power, right? So here's what happens. The two at the back, right, are going, oh my God, can you believe the route that this bitch took? Unbelievable. But then she comes from the front all the way to the back, and they're like, oh my God, honey, that was amazing. It was fucking beautiful. Oh, incredible. I want to be you when I grow up. So, you've got these two different models, and women are really learning to come into this power without the ego. Because, you know what? We don't have to become men to be better women, to be stronger. We don't have to become macho. We don't actually have to be the best. I think everyone here has said it. You need to become the best you, and you do that through certain ways. But there are differences between men and women, and we need to make sure that we strengthen our female model so that we actually can all grow from every part of it.
Absolutely. And perfect segue, because Raquel, one of the things that I did want to draw out in your conversation was because you did, you're a mum of four children, and you're up to big stuff in life, right? And it's a constant reminder for you about managing both worlds. But the thing that also did come out in some of your sharing was that your commitment to others wasn't from a place of sacrifice, that your commitment to others was from a place of contribution. So what would you like to share with us about that, what that's looked like for you, or how that shows up in the world?
Well, I can speak to everything everybody says, just ties it so beautifully. I remember being very resentful for very, very, very long time. I spent decades of my life taking care of people and being resentful about it because it wasn't a choice. It was something that I experienced, had been imposed upon me, and I didn't have freedom around it. So the transformation and the shift for me is like, now I have a choice. I can do exactly the same thing, but from a place of choice and freedom. And not only that, I can create projects. I find myself in conversations that generate new ideas, and with new ideas, leadership calls, and then who's going to do that? Oh, okay, it's me. So usually you find yourself creating stuff and leading stuff and bringing people together, and that is fuel for my life now. And I had a friend who, we were having a conversation with a bunch of friends, and one of them said to someone else who was telling me all about their dreams and aspirations, and this friend interrupted and went, hang on a second, don't tell Raquel that, because you're going to be in trouble. She's going to listen to you like that now. And there's no space other than that where she is. And so what I want to say about, there's one aspect of transformation for me that is vivid, that is there every day, and that is not pleasant. And that is that, when I was talking about the caterpillar, that space in between one thing and the other of nothingness, that space of nothingness occurs to me as uncertainty. Like all of a sudden you go, oh, I could have that, I could be that, and then you go, shit, like here I am, and this is what I can see for myself now. And all of a sudden, all you can see is a gap. It's a gap of what you just said, Kylee. I am not that person. Hence, that's why my life doesn't look like that right now. Who do I need to become? What actions do I need to take? What conversations do I need to take out of existence in my life? What conversations do I need to bring into existence? What people do I need to surround myself with so that reality becomes my reality now? And I tell you what, I struggle with that. I really do. Like I work with Louise daily, and she knows firsthand that I'm in tears a lot of the time because sometimes I can see opportunities and possibilities for myself, and the challenge of who I need to be to step into that, and the time that it takes for things to become a reality, and sometimes that future becomes a future that I need to get to and becomes a struggle. You know how I was talking about my own narrative that I was born into, is like life is a struggle. Sometimes that pops up in my life and I have to go, oh, hang on a second, who I am being right now that life is a struggle. And I catch myself, and life does not have to be a struggle. So I take myself out of that conversation and I place myself into, you know what? Right now, I've got a vision. I know what I want from my life. I know what I'm working towards. I know what my life is about. And right now, it doesn't look like that. And it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely fabulous. We would love to be able to continue this. We could obviously continue this forever, but we do need to wrap up. So what I do want to give you an opportunity to do in closing is, if given everything that's been shared, if there's anything that stands out for you, and if you had to stand in an elevator and now you're given the opportunity to have 60 seconds to say the thing that you really think needs to be said, so that you don't miss that opportunity, I'm going to go around and give each of you the opportunity to do that as a powerful place to complete today's session. And before we do that, I do, on behalf of everybody that's here today, thank you for everything that you've done to contribute today and the impact that you've had through your sharing. It's been such an honour. So over to you. Is somebody, just feel free if you can see already that, yep, go for it, Louise. Love it.
Okay, I'd like to end by thanking Amy and Nancy. Just extraordinary opportunity, and to say that life's a conversation, everyone. So what conversation will we have today? Some of you are completing your day. We're starting our day. What conversations can you have today or tomorrow that will make a difference? Choose those wisely and have them.
Beautiful. Thanks, Louise. Shona.
I'd like to acknowledge everybody because you're extraordinary, but I want to finish up by saying these words. And then you die. And pretty much all there is between now and then. And who are you going to be in that gap, that space, that I don't know, moment, eon, right? And your choice.
Beautiful. Thank you, Shona. Choice. Two very powerful things today. A choice of what you're going to say in the next 24 hours and choosing how to show up. Raquel and JJ. Yes, JJ.
I just want to say thank you. I felt like a piece of a beautiful puzzle, just with all of these women together. And I found you all fascinating. And it made me realize one thing, that the stories that I have going on in my own head help drive me to become a better person are not as powerful in helping me to transition as the other stories that you're willing to truly listen to and let influence your being. And I just want to say thank you to all of you. You're magnificent.
Right back at you, JJ. Thank you. And Raquel?
Thank you. Look, the same for me. And one thing I want to say is it takes courage. When you look around and you see amazing people doing amazing things and you think, wow, how are they doing it? It's so easy. No, it's not. It takes courage. And someone said to me once, if you woke up tomorrow in a brand new life and you could only take one thing with you and everything else felt like disappeared, what would you take? And that question, as hypothetical as it is, got me thinking. And I went, you know what? I actually realized that there's a lot that I spend time and energy in every day that I actually wouldn't take with me. So have the courage to have those things disappear and create something that actually you would die to take with you.